Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. French President Emmanuel Macron has urged his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to use his influence to help stop Russia's war in Ukraine.
L'agression russe en Ukraine a porté un coup.
I know I can count on you to bring Russia to its senses, he told Mr. Xi at the start of talks in Beijing. Mr. Xi said their two countries had the ability and responsibility to safeguard world peace. The French leader is on a state visit to China, which has refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Accompanied by a large business delegation, Mr. Macron is also seeking to bolster trade ties. He is joined by European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, who he invited to take part in talks with Chinese leadership. Meanwhile, China has launched military drills in response to a much-anticipated meeting between Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen and the US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. They met in California a week after President Tsai was feted in New York with a leadership award. Ms. Tsai hailed their strong and unique partnership, and Mr. McCarthy said that arms sales to Taiwan must continue. Beijing, in turn, has vowed a resolute response and sent warships into the waters around the self-governed island. 5 people have been killed in a pre-dawn tornado that ripped through southeastern Missouri. Roofs were ripped off and power lines downed in devastated Bollinger County. First responders from multiple agencies combed through destroyed homes and businesses in the rural area. 5 people were also injured and 87 structures damaged, with 12 of those buildings completely destroyed. Storm spotters reported the tornado touched down in the area at around 3:30 a.m. local time, one of more than a dozen twisters seen in the Midwest overnight. Another round of nationwide strikes and protests have taken place in several cities in France after a meeting between the Prime Minister and Labour unions failed to break a political stalemate. Some clashes between police and protesters erupted in Rennes, with projectiles being thrown at police who responded with tear gas. Thousands were marching in the streets of Rennes in western France and Calais in the north, with protesters chanting and holding signs. They're calling for the scrapping of the deeply unpopular pension bill, which makes people work for longer in their lives. South Africa has revoked a national state of disaster declared in February to manage a crippling electricity crisis. The state of disaster gave the government additional powers to respond to the crisis. The government will now work to reduce the impact of power cuts using existing legislation and contingency arrangements. Sudanese leaders have again postponed the signing of a final agreement to re-establish a civilian government as differences within military factions intensify. Talks continued overnight, with negotiations centred on a draft deal that was to be signed on Thursday. Sudan has been in political crisis since October 2021, when the army overthrew a civilian government that ousted long-serving leader Omar al-Bashir in 2019. And dolphins and trainers from eastern Ukraine are now delighting children in Romania, having fled the country's war. Last year, the dolphinarium took in 4 dolphins and 3 sea lions, alongside their trainers and doctors fleeing the shelling in the eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. Romania is one out of some 14 European Union states that have aquariums with sea animals. In Kharkiv, the local dolphinarium sought to move their dolphins and sea lions as soon as the shelling started last February.
It was new experience for us and for our animals because we are different. It's not the family, but it's a very good friends. Like our team, the same. Because we have a border language, and we was a lot of nervous, we was afraid, scared about all this situation. But right now, really, the people here is very kind for us.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.